Okay, welcome everyone. You are privately invited to this event because you have been in one of my hyperautomation classes, or you're one of the Integration Quest instructors that are being groomed to also teach this class, to teach some of the Integration Quest portions of the class as well that we're working on, because we're going to do a deeper dive in Integration Quest with Composer and RPA with different use cases to build your knowledge base out. Now, the hyperautomation course is excellent as a preview and introductory level for each of the products that we do touch in the hyperautomation class. But I know myself, my depth of understanding is MuleSoft. I learn Flow, I learn Composer, I learn RPA, but I want to do more in Composer and RPA areas. So that's what we will be doing with our we recently got a MuleSoft license, so incredibly excited about that. It's a hyperautomation package. So Integration Quest is now officially a customer. Can you believe that? Isn't that awesome? Yeah, we're very excited. But what comes with that also is a license cost. And so guess what? We're going to be busy and, of course, excited about being busy to be providing some additional use cases. I've got a lot of the team members and some of the community members and some of you all have mentioned and contributed in some ideas of, some other RPA use cases and Composer use cases. So it's a collaboration. This is a brainstorm that's going to benefit all of us. And I do appreciate and look forward to your input on that. So it's a growth in process. A few announcements also, the slides that I'm going to be sharing, that I'm going to be using for this exam preparation session, it is going to be shared with you. I'll convert it over into a PDF and you're welcome to have it as study material. So no worries on that. I also have some additional material that I will be including with that. So if you're watching the recording, you need to send me an email request to Diane@integration.quest and let me know that you want a copy of the supporting documentation that goes with this. Okay. And be glad to share that, because my personal goal is to give back to you. I had many people on my journey that helped me along, and I had always said early on that that's what I intended to do, and I'm doing that, and actually got recognized for that in the MuleSoft Community Awards this year. Just recently was recognized as a top muley who gives back, and that really touched my heart, because that's what I had said I wanted to do all along, and I guess I'm doing it. But at any rate, let's go ahead and get this party started. I told you I was going to switch over to my headset, so give me just a minute. You'll probably notice a little bit of sound changing here. 1 second. Of course, this is why I have headset hair. Can y'all hear me okay? Good. Okay, cool. Thanks. Hey, KJ, good to see you there. Yeah. Awesome. All right. So let's get started on things here. I'm going to come off camera myself so that my focus is where I can go in through material. I'm going to be bringing you up some different material here. And sound is okay. Sound check is loud and nice and clear, I hope. Yeah. Okay, great. Very good. Okay, so to kick this off, welcome. Here's our agenda. We do have a 2-hour block. If we finish sooner, we'll finish sooner. If we go later, we go later. I'm done for the day otherwise for other commitments. So I'm here for the duration. So happy Friday, folks. Happy Friday. Had a busy week over here. Here's our agenda. Hyperautomation objectives. Now that will be specifically for this course and for the exam. I will be reviewing a lot of the use case and aspects of the course, primarily to point out the objectives for the exam. And we'll touch over exam preparedness, and then a Q&A segment with some exam questions from the practice exam, not the real exam. Sorry, I just can't share the real exam with you. I don't have a copy of it. But anyway,
this is our agenda. So, and it is an open forum. So if you have a question at certain points along the way, or you want to contribute something, raise your hand. Make sure that all of the reactions are there. You want to raise your hand? Everybody raise your hand and do a wave. I saw some emojis come through. Is the hand raising thing there? Okay, cool. Very good. Very good. All right, awesome. Yeah, very good. Very good. Y'all are awesome. Look how good you are. You're like my favorite students. The best, the best. Hey, who's going to TDX? Give me an emoji. Celebration emoji if you're going to TDX in March. Awesome. Robert's going. Steven. Cool, cool. Griselda. Awesome. I'm committed to teach. Maybe they'll let me teach from there. What do you think? I would do it. I know my partner in business, Ryan Haig, he's going. And Robert's going. He's on our team also. He's an integration quest instructor as well. All righty. So the hyperautomation objectives. Now, as we look at the various components that are needed for this use case, it also goes hand in hand with what is going to be on the exam. Okay. And there are reasons we have to do things certain ways to support the hyperautomation connectivity across the board. So in the course material, you see us create a MuleSoft secure API, okay, with a TLS context so that it's running HTTPS, because in order for it to be utilized elsewhere, it needs to be secure, it needs to be HTTPS. So we use that, we go through the life cycle. Many of you remember we go through the life cycle of the MuleSoft API and, build that out. It's interacting with a system API. We actually connect to a database that we're going to be getting detailed information from and posting some information back into that database. So that's one of the first things we start off with, is diving into MuleSoft. So in regards to the exam, there are questions about the life cycle of the API, about the API-led principles, meaning that you need to understand what the 3 tiers are for the organizational units that the APIs are in. So we've got the experience, the process, and the system APIs that you need to clearly understand their purpose of what they'll be doing, basically. So we start there with MuleSoft, and then we go into MuleSoft RPA, and that's where we create our bot. Sometimes that bot beats us up, and sometimes we beat the bot up, but the bot does come out doing what we want it to do in most cases. Matthew, I had to laugh again at the picture you gave me with me us beating up the bots. But at any rate, it cracks me up. But nonetheless, we conquered it, and it isn't easy. It is challenging at times, because we have to break down the steps of that bot step by step as we go through it. And Wojciech contributed immensely on ideas with really teaching that bot to pause, to wait, to, he really contributed so much to what we needed to be thinking about when it came to really handling that bot. And that's so important. So more to come on that. So that's what Wojciech was mentioning when he came on. He's like, I got your message. So we're going to be cooking up some things that capture some of his experience that he's had in that area. So it is important. We'll go through some details on that product also. There's RPA Manager, and then there's RPA Recorder. So again, we'll go across those. We'll talk about them. So once we got our bot done, so our system API and our bot was ready, then we did some integration pieces. Okay, those integration pieces are critically important for the entire hyperautomation piece to work across the board. And that means that not only our connected app, but our named credentials and our external credentials and those integration pieces and bringing in our API into Salesforce, all of those pieces had to be in place for us to be able to interact with these different platforms. Okay, so we spent some time on that. Then we came back around and we got into, I think we actually did Salesforce Flow next. It doesn't matter. Anyway, we'll talk about Composer next, because then we got into Composer, and Composer gave us that opportunity to really interact between the API, the MuleSoft API, the bot, Slack, Google Sheets. We could have sent emails. We could have connected to NetSuite. There's a jillion things that Composer could do. But in our case, you know, that's Composer is truly a composer. It's like that orchestra, the conductor of an orchestra tapping into them. So Composer is very, is very useful in that means of connecting the different platforms and what they have available for us. Of course, then in Salesforce Flow, because we did that integration piece, Salesforce Flow allowed us to utilize, for example, the MuleSoft System API data types and the preset. Well, when we made that connection, Apex objectives and Apex code was created that allows us to use those objects inside of Salesforce flows. So that's a huge benefit as a result of having that MuleSoft API created. It's not just, okay, great, I can use that. Well, in addition to that, when we did that integration piece and brought that API into Salesforce, then those assets were, those endpoints and those assets and those definitions were all there for us to use within Salesforce Flow. That truly made that integration so much more streamlined. And then we get into Salesforce Orchestration, in which we're, in our case, for our use case, we had a lot of flows that were already created for us. Some of them were just stubbed out, but they were like send an email and make it, do different things that, that were previously done for us. But what Salesforce Flow allowed us to do, more importantly, was those stages that it has, a stage and steps. And some of those steps allowed us to do something in the background, just go do it. And other things that we had to wait for approval to have that done. So orchestration brought in a different dimension altogether, truly like a conductor of an orchestra, and having each of them, be done at certain times, kind of like timing in a composition. Timing in a composition. You do this now and you do this then, and, play the drums in the background. Well, all of that was part of how our process went. We had background flows happening at certain stages, and then others were interactive. And some of them were sequentially done, and others were done asynchronously. They could run all at the same time. And then Einstein chatbot. I have heard people say that Einstein is not part of this exam, but it is. It's listed in the objectives, and I know that there are some questions on it. So I urge you to be familiar with it. Don't just discount it. Now, it may not be as many questions as some of the other product lines, but Einstein chatbot just brings up that interaction with a user. It's like a little user interface that kicks things off. It can run flows. It can, gather data from somebody. So it's a nice way of interacting. And some of you may remember in the class that I shared with you, I teach for one of our clients, I teach for an insurance company occasionally. And we were talking about, the products that they use, and I found out what they use. And I actually became a customer of them and needed motorcycle insurance. Another whole story there. But anyway, to update you, I have ridden the motorcycle once now. But nonetheless, I needed insurance before I could do any of that. And I went with that company's insurance. And when I needed my insurance cards, Stephen, when I went with my insurance, I needed my insurance card, I noticed I was interacting with Einstein chatbot. I'm like, look at that. And it was a great customer experience. So the Einstein chatbot has dialogues, it has menus, it has a process that it will do, gathering data, going and running flows. So it has things you have to know about too. But having many products available is not necessarily what it means for a piece to be hyperautomation. Now, in our course, you might remember we have where we can automate segments of a process. Okay, so there's simply automation. And then there's automating a given process, like not just a small piece, but maybe a little bit of a workflow that kind of stays within a department, but a smaller little bit of a workflow that's like a process automation. But where hyperautomation where things become so different is when those automation pieces cross over different organizations or may go out and be a larger element in an enterprise. Okay, and that's what hyperautomation is, interacting with the different teams, the different parts of the business, or another company altogether. Okay, so that's kind of the scope of how it steps up to be a little bit more than just an automation piece. It truly is a hyper automation piece. Okay, now getting ready for the exam. I wanted to cover this first because everything we talk about after this is going to be feeding into this. Okay, we have the exam data sheet. Now, I know I shared that with a lot of you in the class. I'm going to pop it into this into the chat here as well, or mail it to you later. I'm not finding it real fast and I don't want to spend time trying to locate that, but I should have it. Anyway, there's a hyperautomation objectives data sheet. I found it. All right, coming in the chat. All right, so this is our first stop. I would recommend having a moment to really absorb this, take this in, and the bottom half of this should be your study guide, okay? Especially the left side. There should be clarity on the left side in each of these categories, because these categories, the employ best practices when building hyperautomation solutions, etc., all the way down, those categories match exactly the categories on the exam, not just the practice exam, but the real exam as well. Okay. So each of these categories you want to be very clear on. Now, we didn't do them in order in the class. These are going to be integrated throughout the whole hyperautomation experience. Okay, now, of course, when we talk about Composer, there are some details here, but when you see something like, given a scenario, implement the appropriate controls, if-else blocks, for each loops, make sure you do understand those, okay? So if you see something really kind of popping out at you, you're likely going to see some things like that on the exam, okay? But this should be your starting point of review. This is where I would start, is review, okay? And after the class, after you've kind of, been in class for the week, or if you're doing self-study, some people did self-study on this. I know you all have been in a class, but if you have associates, then there are associates that, I know in the MuleSoft community that didn't have the resources to take the course. And so they just self-studied, and you have to count on some of the other resources there. Christine, that used to be on the exam webpage, but I noticed it's not there any longer. So I'll show you that. Oh, here it goes. 1 second. I just realized I sent that. I only sent that to Andrea. Sorry, let me give it to everybody. There you go. Thanks, Christine. Christine's like, Diane, I don't see it. It's not there. Okay. So I would, like I said, this is where I encourage that beginning point to be. Okay. The exam data sheet. And so then I recommend, when you feel like you've kind of reviewed things enough and you kind of have absorbed, enough of the material and everything, then Sit for the entire practice exam. Sit through the whole thing, the whole 2 hours, or the whole 60 questions. Okay. So there's 60 questions on the practice exam and on the real exam. But you've got your timer that's running up here, and sit for the entire thing for several reasons. The most important reason is the very first time you take that practice exam, it's truly going to do an assessment of your strengths and weaknesses right then. Okay. If you kind of play around with a few questions and play around with a few questions, and then it's not going to be, you're going to kind of know what they're looking for on there. But I mean, go in there and take it like you're doing it A through Z. And then give me your report. Okay. And what the report is going to show you is where you need to circle back and study deeper on some of these objectives. The objectives here are the same objectives here on the data sheet. So that's going to help you drill down and study. And I think that, I don't know, that might have been mine when I first took it. I don't know. But anyway, I better have known the MuleSoft stuff. But that gives you a pointer. And then if you still need help in these categories, you do have some references here. And there are some really good references, some trailheads, and some different recommendations in the Knowledge Hub and things like that. But if and you can do that, but if you still aren't clear and you still are challenged, this is when you want to reach out to me. Okay, or someone in your team or something, but I'm offering myself. So you're welcome to go ahead and reach out and say, I am just not getting this area. Okay, and that's okay. That's where we want to drill down and go deeper into that based on your scores. Okay. So that's where you'll identify your knowledge gaps. Where am I lacking? What do I need to build back up? And then dive deep on those gaps. Retake the practice exam and see how you're doing. You do. Now, what I don't want you to do, I don't want you to be memorizing the answers. I don't want you to be like, yeah, it was B, or, I don't want you to be memorizing, what it might be. I really want you to understand the concept. And we do have some questions from the practice exam that I'm going to share with you, and I'm going to show you how to read those questions. We're going to do that at the end. Okay. So I've got, I think, 5 different questions from the exam that we're going to go over, and I'm going to coach you on how to read that question, how to watch what it's looking for, and how to make sure that you don't get snagged by an oops in that process. Okay. So where is all this stuff? Okay. A couple things that need to be announced here is that, let's see. Okay, first of all, I want you to notice if you log into the Hyperautomation exam itself. Okay, go to this link, it's in the chat. Notice a few announcements here. Okay, really important. Notice a few announcements here. I guess it was also at the top. Let me go back to the top. Hold on. Yeah, it's up here. Hold on. Okay, so notice this. Starting May 6th, it's going to be available through Web Assessor. They are moving the certifications over to Salesforce certification program. Okay, and available through Web Assessor starting May 6th. Scroll down and notice this other announcement until April. Until April. I do not know the date that they will cut us off from taking the exams on the training.mulesoft.com site, but there is a date in sight. They will be saying at some point, okay, we're transitioning over. Okay. And I know it says here the cost until April 19th is here, but it does not really specifically say when that transition will happen. If you happen to hear about that, let me know. That would be great to know so I can help people know this and be aware of this. Now, you do not need to purchase this exam. For those of you who were in the class, it comes with the exam. You have 2 attempts at the exam. Okay. And so that is coming with it. Now, I read a little bit that may be changing. I don't know. So if you have associates on your teams that haven't taken the course yet, you may want to make sure you get that in before April, I would recommend, because it sounds like it might, the exams may not be available with the course. I don't know for sure. Okay. Until April 26th, you get two exam attempts. The course must be completed by April 26th. So be aware of that. Okay. And then to prepare, this is a good link on preparing. Okay, so this would be some of the trailheads. And you do have to be logged into your Trailhead Academy account for this. Some of this is your prerequisites for the class. If you didn't do that, I understand. But at the same time, this is to prepare you for your Hyperautomation Specialist exam. And it kind of walks you through even how to, I think there's even a part here that helps you to be ready to take the exam, purchase and schedule. You won't need to purchase it, but at any rate, there's some details there. And then, of course, the practice exam. Okay, so the practice exam is here. There you go. And you do have to register for it, but it is free. So there's no charge for that. And you can take it as many times as you want. Okay, if you should have an account, so don't do that. You just sign in. Okay, so here's the Hyperautomation Specialist practice exam. And when you go to take it, it's going to look a lot like the real exam. Okay, you got a timer. That's why I say sit through it the entire time. Get your brain conditioned for a 2-hour exam. I know someone who not long ago took 2 exams back to back and actually passed them both. To your kudos, and you know who you are. But would you like to give a little recommendation on preparing yourself for an exam? Or yeah. Just get your brain in a mindset of taking an exam, right? Yeah. So you just have to kind of get your focus, like, all right, I'm going to sit down here and take the exam. And there's a lot of literature, or I shouldn't say a lot, but there are some step-by-step instructions to prepare you for taking the exam. And I'll make sure you have that page. And basically it's like, you've got to be in an area where you cannot talk to anyone. No one can talk to you. They do scan your room with your camera. You basically cannot take a break. You've got to sit there the whole 2 hours and go all the way through it and not look or talk to anybody in the room. Actually, no one should be in the room with you anyway. My dog was in the room and I told her he could bark. And they're like, it's okay. We understand. I'm like, but he doesn't know the answers. So anyway, that's the idea behind it is you're pretty much locked down. What I recommend, I'm just going to give you a little bit of strategy here, and then we'll actually talk about reading the questions later. But my strategy here is I have had people tell me that they did not make it to the end of the exam. And that's most unfortunate, because there could be like super easy questions down here and they didn't get to them. They got snagged on a question here that took too long. Yeah. Vanessa, you are not allowed to have a fidget spinner. Sorry. Oh, for the dog, if they start bothering you, that might work. Yeah. They wouldn't let you have that on your desk though, probably.
That's unfortunate. Yeah.
So, you don't want to be snagged by the questions that are very wordy. Okay. So what I recommend now, I am not looking at the answers. I'm just clicking to go forward. So don't count on me for accuracy right now. Okay. So if I'm good and I feel confident about my answers and moving right along and just going forward, like I said, I'm not looking at my answers, so don't hold me up. And I notice choose 3. Watch out for that. Watch out for that choose 3. Yes, Robert, that's great advice. Race through the ones you know immediately, mark the ones you don't. Perfect. That's exactly where I was going with that. Yep. So choose 3. Be careful if you choose 2 that are right and you didn't get the third one chosen, you get the whole answer wrong. Choose 3 means you have to choose 3 and they all 3 have to be correct. Okay. And like Robert said, mark that one for review. Not quite sure. Moving forward. These are some nice short ones. I'm not getting the long ones yet, but there are some long ones in here. Okay. Choose 2. And again, don't hold me for the answers. I'm not looking at them. Well, maybe that one I did. But anyway, again, you'll go through this process. And as you do, go through it, watch your time. It's 60 questions for 2 hours. That means on average, 2 minutes a question. Okay. So do not linger. Some of them may take you less than 2 minutes. Yeah, right. Skip the one. I was trying to find one. I'm commenting against what Robert's putting in the chat. Skip all the ones with 3 and 4 paragraphs of reading. I'm thinking that this one is not as bad, but there's sort of a paragraph. Okay. But it's not as wordy as some of the architect exams are, for sure. Yeah. So as you go through it, then what you do when you get all of them filled out and you go ahead and click on, okay, I'm finished. And it's going to say, oh, wait, you've got some that are marked for review. So then you've got to go back and click the ones you mark for review, make sure that's what you want, and then click finish. Okay. It's telling me I have questions not answered. I don't want you to run out of, amazing that I got some right. I don't want you to run out of time. I want you to get to the end of that exam. Make sure that you do that. Okay. And now you take, hopefully this is a pass, and then celebrate, do your happy dance. But then if not, that's okay. It's only a temporary thing. It's an assessment. I do not want you to think of this as a fail. I want you to think of it as an assessment of your knowledge base. And that's when you're going to go back and test it against the objectives, the data sheet of that exam, and say, oh, okay, here's where I need to drill down. Here's where I need to study. Okay. So that's the concept behind a lot of that, is I want you to feel comfortable. I don't want you to stress out. And as you're going through it, just say, you know what? I mean, believe it or not, I passed the fundamental, the developer certification the first time. And I coach people that have a terrible time with that one. It's all according to our strengths and weaknesses. Between the 2 architect certifications, I passed the integration solutions, but I think it was the second time I took it. But the platform architect certification kicked me in the rear. I couldn't, it was like, I think 4 times, but I didn't give up. That's the key. Never give up. Don't give up. You'll pass it. Just keep building your knowledge base out. That's all. Okay. So as that's strategy for the exam. We're going to go over some of the questions and stuff too. And I'm going to go over how to really read those and help you through some of that there as well. Now, one of the biggest things on this exam is knowing what to use and when. What is the right tool for the job? Because there is overlap. There is overlap. So what's going to drive your decision is going to be your use case or your requirements or what they're currently using. Okay. It's not going to be a standard cut and dry cookie cut. You're going to do this and that's how it is. Nope. In some cases it might be, but in other cases it's not. Let's talk about flow orchestration. Okay. This is a great, I think it's actually on one of the trailheads where I picked this up and I split it out. But this is one of the best designs that I've seen that really help to remember at a high level what to use where. Flow orchestration. Okay, it helps you to do the multi-stage, multi-step, multi-user step. Okay, either guided, which means that it would be a interactive step, or unsupervised, which is a background step. Okay. So depending on what your need is, if you need a department to approve something, then orchestration is going to be involved. Okay. So we will look at some of that. Then flow builder. Okay. Workflow automation, again, guided or unsupervised, because you could do a screen flow if you wanted to have it interactive. A single stage, a single user step. Look at the difference between them. So exam relevant, when you see multi-stage versus a single stage, single user step, that's going to lean you towards one product or another. Okay, whether you're going to use flow builder or you need to use flow orchestration. Okay, any point APIs. This is when you have that backend system. Okay, and you need to make a connection to it with a system API. And that'll do the trick. That'll do it. Okay, or a legacy system. Now, legacy actually is more into RPA, but I'm talking about a legacy system that you can create an API for. Who was it that recommended? Oh, I wish I remember his name. That recommended when we were working with the bot, and he said, we just need to create an API for this web page. And you're right. If we could do that, that would be what we would do with MuleSoft. But anyway, on-prem backend systems, multi-cloud environments. That's another concept to drive you towards MuleSoft. B2B, B2C, validated systems, etc. Again, all part of utilizing MuleSoft for that. Okay. And then for the bot, RPA bot, legacy systems that do not have an API. Legacy systems that do not have an API. Okay, that you have to have a bot. Was it Amir? Yeah, Vanessa, I think you're right. I think
I think that's him.
I can't remember who that was. Yeah. He's like, dadgummit, because we were all. So it's interesting how, a percentage of challenges came across with RPA in certain classes. And, but it's just, you're teaching it step by step by step. I think it was because Wojciech was not in our class, because Wojciech was given us all these really cool pointers on pause after or click on the mouse, have the mouse click on the screen so it activates that page. And Wojciech, I did incorporate that into future classes so that it would make sure it acknowledged that it was on the page. Yeah. So I'm enhancing the experience there. So the ones who struggled with it were before that. But yeah, so thanks. And then unstructured data, if the data is not nicely defined or whatever, the bots are great for that. And whenever you cannot use an API. So those are going to be the key factors or buzzwords that are going to lean you towards, hey, let's let RPA do it, Okay. And then this is labeled as flow integration. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was the early name for Composer, but this is actually Composer down here. This is Composer. And that's for your business apps, Google Sheets, Slack, any of those products, but also to where, emailing for attachment, processing files, data collection, a BA coming in here. So we'd have a BA popping in, and really we can equip them with this low code tool for Composer and have them be working on, creating solutions. Okay. So again, this is a great resource. Didn't come with a lot of literature. It was just kind of like, here's what it does. But I really like how it brings these buzzwords together for you of what is going to lean you towards one direction or another. And then a dear friend and a genius who was an instructor at one time is now in the sales, created this chart. It's unofficial. Okay. So don't hold him nor I to any of this 100%. It is unofficial. but it is very helpful when you're sitting for the exam and you're trying to figure out exactly what, what product you want to use, and as you're mapping it out, and as far as that's concerned. Okay. But there is also a key that I will include this in for you with the packet, with the email out with this in a PDF format that gives the keys here in explanation. Okay. And so depending upon what you're looking for example, if you need to trigger with an inbound HTTP request, okay, MuleSoft RPA, Anypoint Platform, Composer by this quarter. And I do believe that did happen, if I recall. It is possible in Salesforce Flow and in Flow Orchestration, but is that the best place for it? So again, you would have to assess. So I know it's as clear as mud, but on the other hand, it's going to also be, you're going to have to think about, even in the professional world, you're going to have to think about, what are they currently using? What do they want to use this for? What's going to be the best way to get them there? Based on the capabilities of the project, of the products. Okay. Now, some things are very obvious. Parallel processing. MuleSoft RPA. It's not quite. Anypoint Platform, you betcha. Okay. Big data. If you see anything about big data, or you have a client that you're working with that has big data, they need to transform and do all kind of stuff, and they've got all kind of things, you better go to Anypoint Platform, because nothing else is going to do it like it does. Okay. So use this as a guide, allows user interaction, the bot does. Salesforce Flow Orchestration. Again, there's some great things here. So I want you to take this in as well. And like I said, I'll share the key with you so that you have that in addition. Okay, now the next slide's going to make you a little dizzy. I'm just going to say, because it was pretty dizzy to work it up as well. But what it does is it pulls, which two would you use to integrate multiple Salesforce org instances? Multiple Salesforce org instances. That would be, I think I have that actually defined, where it would end up being where you would use Composer for that. You could also do that in orchestration. So there's a couple different ways. Excuse me one second. But I think I had some notes also that were those kind of questions. Let me see. Yeah, Composer is going to be the best fit for that. Here's some other little notes that I had along the way. They're very rough, though. I've warned anybody that I shared this with. These are very rough. Salesforce data, if you want to work with Salesforce Flow with a single org, it's going to be Salesforce. Other data sources, Composer. Now, that doesn't mean that MuleSoft can't handle other data sources. It certainly can. Multiple Salesforce org, Composer. Okay, so there's some things like that, but these are some of my rough notes, and I hesitate to really, I need to rework these, and I'll rework some of these to show you some of this. Like Composer versus Anypoint. There's some other things here, but again, it's very rough in my notes on that one. That's actually from my studying point. Okay. So great question. Yep, great question. Okay, so this does make you a little dizzy, and it's a little bit blurry because what I wanted to capture. I wanted to capture the MuleSoft products and the Salesforce products. Okay. And so in the MuleSoft products, we have the different components of the MuleSoft platform that support the lifecycle of the API, because you will have questions about that. Okay. We start in Design Center. Now I'll also, I don't mind to share this one with you as well, because this is where it was created on Lucid. And I think I can get it to be a lot clearer here. So I don't mind to share this with you. As you could probably see it maybe a little bit better. I don't know if it's any better than on the slide or not, but I share it with you to say, we have the design center. This is where we create our specification, the rules of engagement. Okay. Input, output, request response, and the data types. And everything we define in there ends up in Salesforce as APEC objects. Okay. So we want to be sure, as many of you know, or I shouldn't say many, there were a few of us that learned how important that was. If we had something misspelled or something that wasn't right, it didn't pan out and work for us on the Salesforce side. Okay. So it all began in the design center. We created our specification, and you will have questions on the code structure. Okay. So be paying attention to your methods and your resources and those type of things. And then once we got it satisfied where we wanted it to be, we published it to Exchange. And Exchange is where we could interact with it and make sure our specification was what we wanted in the mocking service. We were using the mocking service. Then the next step along the way is we bring that specification into Studio, and it becomes what we use as an interface. Now, you don't always have to do that. You don't have to have a API kit router interface used in every flow, in every application. Okay. And actually, the course itself doesn't even use the interface. I am picky about teaching the life cycle, and so I do include it in our classes as we go. Once satisfied with everything in Studio, we test it out that we're good with it, that it gets published to Cloud Hub. Now, wherever the runtime is running, and there are questions in regards to the Mule runtime, so you do want to make sure you're aware that there are different places that runtime can be. Cloud Hub is one of them. Cloud Hub 2.0 is the newer version of Cloud Hub. And then, of course, it can be on-prem or in a data center or cloud provider spun up in a VM, a server. So it gets deployed to Cloud Hub in the Mule runtime. And then from there, we come back and we take our API that we created here in Exchange. We have this API, and we manage that API. And we associate it with, or I should say, we secure it with policies and make sure that it's secure with TLS context so that we can utilize HTTPS protocol. That's necessary for Composer. If you try to connect Composer to an API or to an HTTP connection, it must be HTTPS. Okay, so that's why we did the TLS context. Okay, then we jumped over into RPA Manager, and we got a little bit more on that coming up to create our bot. There's a life cycle there of of managing the bot, doing an evaluation and all that. And then the bot was able to be incorporated, and we used a connected app in Access Management for us to be able to utilize the bot. Okay. And then we also had Composer as a MuleSoft component. And Composer allowed us, these are just some of the connectors. I don't think I got all of them in the picture. Pre-built connectors already done, ready for you to use. Everything from documentation management to connecting to our API, connecting to our bot. It's all here in Composer. Like Salesforce is here, different orgs. You can set up different orgs. Yes, Wojciech, thank you. I guess he dropped already, yeah. Okay. So as we go forward from there, there's the MuleSoft family. Here's the Salesforce family. Now, in the Salesforce family, from this side, from the Salesforce platform now, we have to connect to our MuleSoft services. There's that integration piece. We see integration happening there. And specifically, we do a login from Salesforce that creates automatically the named credential, the external credential, the permission sets, and it identifies the auth provider. Okay. And all of that is so important to having this integration piece completed. This part is the login portion. Okay. So this is the login part. Let's see if I can go up one. Yeah. Okay. So we get logged in from the Salesforce platform. Then that piece is done, but then we want our API that we created, our system API, to also be integrated. Okay. So we start off with creating the external credentials for the type of authentication that we are using. Then the next step is to create the named credentials. See, those were automatically created when we logged into at the Anypoint platform level. But when we're adding our API, the access to our API in that organization, in the MuleSoft business group, then we need to do these manually. Maybe that's changing. I've heard some brilliant engineers might be working on some of this. But anyway, we have to create this portion manually. The external credentials, then we go into named credentials, and then we go into the permission sets. And then that access has been integrated. And then we import that API as a MuleSoft service. And that's what brings all of the data, all of the specifications in and all the details in from our API into Salesforce. And then we can use those Apex defined assets in Salesforce, or objects, I should call them. Okay, in Salesforce flows. So we see that we are interacting and using that data. And then as we go into Salesforce orchestration, like I said, there's those stages that provide us with the ability to do step-by-step actions that are interactive or running in the background. You can put them in order or run them asynchronously. You can choose that in orchestration. Okay. Then Einstein bot comes in, and it starts off and will trigger off some activities like running a flow, like creating a case, like checking status on a case. So it's doing various things it has a dialogue area. It's got menus. It's got, where you can call a flow. You can do various things. So all of this has, questions, interactive questions, but also it has actions. Okay. So every bit of that is all part of the hyperautomation pieces. Okay. All part of the hyperautomation pieces. So I'll share this with you all as well if you want it. So that's the Salesforce platform activities. So we want to remember all of these when we go to take the exam, or even going to use the product going forward, to know what your tools are. These are all the tools in the toolkit to work with your automation. Okay. And that's the life cycle. And I already went through that, but it's here kind of in a one view of the life cycle of your API. And then the next stage is also API manager, your TLS context. I kind of zoomed in on each of these. Okay. But when we go into looking at the details here, especially like RPA manager, let's look at a few things here before we go forward. Okay. Anypoint platform. So we went into the life cycle. I'm not going to go to each one of them, but we went into the life cycle and actually had this one does have everything running. Yeah. Actually ended up where we were running our apps and having our apps in Cloud Hub. Okay. Our API, our actual web service, our API, and our proxy. Okay. With our proxy, we took and we managed it with API Manager. Okay. And we configured it for TLS, HTTPS with a TLS context. That had to happen first by adding the secrets manager and going through and getting your TLS context set up here. Okay. So again, like I said, we went through the life cycle, the things to know here as you are looking at, let me go here. As you are looking at MuleSoft from a high level, know what you do in each of these environments. Know what you do for each of the components. Okay. And of course, some of the terminology regarding API led, etc. Then we went over to RPA Manager. Okay. So here's into RPA Manager, and you all should have access to an account. I know we had our class accounts, but you can request access to accounts, and I believe you all can to get this. But we followed along the life cycle of our bot, of our RPA processor in RPA Manager. Okay. So in RPA Manager, while we're here, you can also do downloading the apps for the recorder and the builder. Now that we do download the bot and configure the bot to be used in on an isolated server. In our case, it was a virtual machine, but it could be any Windows-based system. It does need to be a Windows-based system. So in the process of our of this life cycle, okay, there's an evaluation process first, and this evaluation process determines what the need is, or I should say, kind of like the approval for our bot. Okay. And in this category, nope, that's not what I wanted. There are evaluators. You're going to have questions about the evaluators and the qualifiers. Yeah, I want to show it. There we go. Okay, so again, there's questions on the exam regarding this. What determines in the evaluation process for if it is worth to do a bot or not, or I guess you say the justification behind it. You've got the costs. Now the costs are not part of the process matrix. Okay, costs are separate. It's part of the evaluation, but it is not part of the matrix. What is part of the matrix is your qualifiers against your benefits. You can change your qualifiers. These are the default qualifiers. So you do want to be familiar, and there's a couple slides in the course material that define these. And you know, it really helps. Like the nature of work, is it judgment based? Is it an objective decision, or is it rule based and it's more subjective? Like it's got to meet this particular criteria or something like that. It either is or is not what we're looking for. So anyway, you will give an evaluation based on the different qualifiers. And then you'll also give the evaluation based on the benefits. You know, is it high risk or low risk? Or is it, what's your output quality? Is it really bad and it needs to be improved? Or is it kind of okay? You know, how complex is it? You know, so you can see the qualifiers versus the benefits here. And basically, as you go through these processes, it's going to land in a certain area that is going to either show that it's favorable for this or not. Okay. Whether you use this or not in the real world, you're going to be tested on it. Okay, so be familiar. Be familiar. Okay. So after it's evaluated, then we move it to the next phase of the life cycle. So we do the evaluation. Now let me go to my backlog here. Okay. And this one is actually moved all the way along. It's been approved. So there's the different life cycles: approved, design, build, test, production. Okay. So this one has actually already been moved along. Let me get into this one. Okay. So this kind of shows where it is in the, when we give access to a team member to manage certain things, we can assign them based on the life cycle. Okay. So you could add different users and have them managing different segments of it. Now in the class, we ended up going through and doing all of it, but that can be divided out amongst, different team members along the way. Okay. So as we are going through and continuing on this process, I'm not going to go into the details of each life cycle state, but I will show you here that in each of the categories, this one is in now what is known as the build phase. So this is where we would transition over into RPA Builder to build it out. And that's the step-by-step process. Okay, step by step. And then what would happen after this, once we're satisfied with it, we would send it back. And let me grab the slide on this to show you real quick, because I don't have a the builder app. There you go, Matthew. Matthew, so what? Look, there's your picture. We go into the RPA builder, we do the detailed steps, and then we come back in. And once we're satisfied with it, it is then moved into the test stage here. You publish it to test. This is going to probably not work. I don't know. It's not really associated with my, let's see. I'm surprised. Seeming to find it. Okay. Then you go into the test phase and you run tests from here. And, it's going to fail because I don't have my VM that has that bot in it, but it would start the test and run the test from there. Once satisfied, you push it into production, and that's the life cycle. Manage from RPA Manager. So when I say that this life cycle state, this slide is very helpful to say the evaluation happens in RPA Manager. We design in RPA Manager, but then we also use the recorder in the design phase, and then we will build. That's where you go into the builder, come back out, you test, push it into production, and then of course there's a whole ops side too. We briefly get into that in class. I'm not sure how much you will be tested on alerting and management, but just to be aware, of course, there's full support for all of that. Okay. So we really don't get too much in, unless we're troubleshooting, and we did troubleshoot a lot of this. So, but at any rate, to give you the idea of what is where, this should help. Again, RPA Manager, remember what we did where. If you can, to identify, we started off with the evaluation. Again, as you go into the build, you use the builder. Get happy with that, bring it back, it goes into test. Okay, so there's the builder, the recorder, we record the steps, and then we ultimately come back here and push it into production. Okay. So there is that reminder. That's my goal here, is to kind of, you go through a week long of class and it's kind of all, you do this, you do that. This is hopefully going to center you on those details. Okay. Any questions so far? Any questions? All right. All right. Moving forward. Composer, highlights from Composer. Okay. We have trigger conditions. There's conditions that have to be met based on what you set that determine if this flow runs. Okay. You can set whatever conditions you want with it when you are using a triggered type of flow. Okay. In our case, we use it to invoke the RPA bot. We also use it to post to our Mule API and send messages and write into some Google Sheets. But these are all the connectors available. You create a ServiceNow ticket. You can push some things into Tableau. Okay. Calendar events, Jira, MuleSoft Teams, Snowflake. I mean, these are connectors. They're ready for them to use. They just have to configure them. So these are all the tools right at their fingertips for a BA to come in and even just use this alone. But it's a bigger part of the hyperautomation piece, but yet this alone is valuable, very valuable. So to take a look at what this looks like as we go into Composer, we could go in and create a new flow. And as we create a new flow, come on. It brings us into where we have a system event that starts. There's those connectors. Okay, Salesforce. You can start off with Salesforce. You create the organization. You could create multiple organizations. This is the one that allows you to create multiple connections to various Salesforce organizations. Okay. Or if you're doing the generic, there's RPA here. Okay. And we connected to our bot. Now it's ready to use our RPA process. It's going to fail because my RPA is not running, but you get the idea. You get the idea. Okay. Then we can invoke a flow. Okay, so there's that up. I'm not going to go too deep into a lot of this for time. Delete. And a scheduler. Now I am going to show you this. Okay, I showed some of this in the class. I want you to pay very close attention to a scheduler in Composer. Take a screenshot of that. Okay. What are your options in Composer to trigger a flow? You've got the least amount of time is every 15 minutes. 30 minutes, 45, 1 hour, 5 hours, 1 day, 7 days, 30 days. Does anybody see any kind of option for cron? Give me a red X if you do not see any option for cron. Right. There's not cron. Can we do a expression? Can we do, no, it is preset solid. Days, hours, minutes. Okay, so be sure to remember that. All right. Moving right. So then there's other things too in flow. We can also test and activate our flows here. So we can activate, have a live one. We can test it. And so all of that would be running and available based on testing it. Okay. Then moving right along, this is the integrations. I've talked about this, but I've got some very clear slides on it for you to study with. Okay. This is what automatically happens when you log on to into Anypoint Platform from Salesforce. Then when we want our API to be considered and used and accessed, you have to do these manually. These are the ones you have to do manually. And then you want to bring your API into Salesforce as a MuleSoft service. And here are our 4 endpoints that we created in our Mule API. And they become available in our Salesforce flows as Apex objects. Let's see. Which one do we want? EV scheduled service. Do get vehicle promotions. That one will do it. Okay. So in here, if we look at our toolbox, so this is Salesforce Flow, by the way. Okay. And this is, you know, to me, it's like a flow chart on steroids because it's a flow, but they actually do things. Like if I were to click on the get promotions and I want to edit this, I can see, okay, well, that's not fun. I can see some of the things configured based on this action. Let me go to something a little more interesting. Okay, we're doing some mapping and assigning. Let's do filter. Okay, here's a filter, kind of like an if statement. You know, filter, if this all happens, then we'll go forward and continue to do whatever we're doing there. Okay, but I want to point out to you also is that look at these values over here. The top part are the resources that we have created. And there's several of these that are Apex defined collections. Here is another Apex defined variable. And when we set those, if we were to look at these, they are actually from, or at least interacting with our Mule API. Our Mule API. As a result of bringing that in as a MuleSoft service. Okay. When I click on this, the filtered promotions, I'm getting the Apex class defined here is from my MuleSoft API. Okay, from my MuleSoft API. Now, where is this? If I go to MuleSoft services, I'll see my API here. Come on. Okay, so all of these are the moving parts that need to be in place. Here is our API. We imported this MuleSoft service. So the life cycle of that API that we put the work into is what's being used on Salesforce here. And you can open those up and you can see the details. And it is a Apex object. Okay. And so these values that are here as part of the code from our API are what we are actually using in Flow. What we're actually using in Flow. Okay, so there is those, and that is how the integration pieces work. Okay, so that's just a reminder, and you've got some decisions you can do. So it is good to know, and there is terminology you want to make sure you're aware of also. And then as we are going into Flow orchestration, this is where we see those stages. Okay, there's stages that include steps. So if I were to go into the example we have for orchestration, let me go back to our flows here. This is where all the flows are. Now, orchestration is considered to be a flow. It's just a certain type of flow. And that's going to be where we'll go to the scheduled service flow. So there's decisions here. And as we built this out, we created, well, first of all, what started it is when a record is created, but it's got 3 conditions. So we would say when a record's created, it's got to meet this criteria. It's got to be one of the kind that we're after for this orchestration to take place. And once we set those conditions, then we have a decision. Okay, one of those values, do they have a service contract or not? Okay, if they do, go to the left. If not, go to the right, and we're going to get approval. And this step here is an interactive step that goes to the accounts receivable department. Okay, so all of these are going to work along the way. When it is not approved and it's rejected, then we've got 2 background steps that are going to happen. But this will pause and wait. The other one at the top, the interactive step, pauses and waits for this to be done before it continues. Once that is done, then it will know to proceed. So then down here in this stage, we've got a background step that's going to check to see if we have the parts available. Interactive, once we confirm the parts are available, so it goes to the parts department. Interactive to schedule the appointment. Okay, they've got to call and set the appointment, or the service department has to call and set the appointment. And then a background step that go ahead and send the email with their appointment. So this is interacting. Let's think about what this is doing now. It's interacting with AR department. It's interacting with the service department, the parts department, multiple groups of people. Okay. And these 3 steps here are synchronous. We've got 3 synchronous steps here. Whereas, well, yeah, that happens afterwards. Yeah, we have these set up to run synchronous by saying that this step has to complete before the next one. So there's a mechanism we can set it here where when this step is completed, then you can start the next one. Otherwise, if they are, there, I'll catch it there. Otherwise, these can all run at the same time. So you have synchronous and you have asynchronous here. Okay, and you want to remember that Orchestrator provides that. Orchestrator allows that, or facilitates it, I guess is a good way to put it. All right. And then the bot, our lovely bot. The bot is going to have a lot of different pieces to it. Notice that there is the main menu. So a lot of these, I know some of you don't have accounts to work with this, but you can get a developer account. And I have found that this is part of it. I have experimented with that for a developer account. So anyway, you can see you have the main menu, different menu items here or options, and we would configure those based on what we needed. There's times when we were asking just a question, and then the response to that would trigger a flow. Okay, and again, another question, trigger a flow. So Einstein chatbot has actions that can trigger flows. Okay, let me see if I can get to Einstein here. Yeah, is that it? So use this as a refresher to bring all of the different products together in your mind and focus on, some of the details that they provide of each of the products. It's like sorting out the products. Okay, so if you want to grab a screenshot of any of this, but a trial account will get you this, or a developer account will get you access to this. Okay, so again, we have interactive questions and we have variables that we're using for some of the information coming in. Okay. And this action to create a case, creating a case, calling the EV case flow, EV create case flow. Okay, so it's not just chit chat back and forth with an Einstein bot. This guy's doing stuff, going out there and actually creating a case or getting the information needed for a promotion or getting, so it's actually doing a lot of work, there. All right, some resources here. Okay, and again, you're going to have access to this. So you'll have these resources to learn some things on your own through Composer and RPA and trail mixes, and then also the docs.mulesoft.com and community relevant things. There's a lot of really good material in the community. Okay, so I urge you to check that out. Any questions thus far? All right, here we go. We got a few questions from the practice exam. It's time for your test. Are you ready? You got to answer in the chat. Even if you're not quite sure, you got to answer in the chat. That means everybody, even if you've not taken the class yet. Okay. So if I was approaching this question, If I was approaching this question, here's my strategy. I would start here. I want to know, what do they want? Oh, I like these questions coming in. What do they want? What are they after here? Okay, what they're wanting to know, the bottom line with all that other fluff up above is what API layer meets these requirements. Okay, now I know I'm looking for an API layer. Yep, looking good. Y'all are looking good. Okay, so now we can go up and read the bits and pieces here. So now I would kind of like, any airline wants to improve their customer service. Okay, yeah. Okay, integrating their reservation system. Okay, I need to know that. They want to integrate it. E-commerce platform in Salesforce. Ooh, that's good. Okay, but they want to build reusable components. Ooh, reusable is buzzword. That's MuleSoft. Yes, KJ. Yeah. Using the API-led connectivity approach. Yep. APIs need to provide access to back-end databases. Remember, we saw that on that first slide. Insulate users from complexity and all that jazz. Layers are system, process, and experience. That is correct. So by process of elimination, data access is not even an option, right? Who can tell me what an experience API is? You can either speak up or throw it in the chat, whatever's good for you.
I mean, isn't that like the
Okay,
same
KJ,
thing as
what's
like an
experience
app?
API?
Like in the sense of like you would use an app to like do something?
You got a secondary mute happening there.
Oh, what the hell?
Yeah, you got I can see you were unmuted, but I could see sound waves. All right. I hate that. Put it in the chat. I'll read it. What's an experience API? Who can tell me?
That's the part that actually transforms
Come on,
the
I got
data.
some muleys in the room. You guys know this.
Not how you actually would like view and like interact with
Could
it.
hear
So
him?
like,
Wow, but it's not coming through on my sound. All right, that means it's me. Hang on.
wait, am I coming through?
Yeah, are
I
any
see.
of us? Dan, can you not hear us? Because we're now we're
KJ,
talking
you
bad
can hear
about you
me,
now.
right?
I
Oh
can
yeah, I
now.
can hear you, Christine. Oh, okay, there
Okay,
you go.
yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, it was on my side. Wow. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, okay, so who wants to say? Go ahead, repeat it, because I don't know what got recorded.
I think we're all
So-
saying the same thing. Yeah, it was spot on. Robert said it. It's like experience is like what you're going to access, right? So like on an app, like all of the apps have specific functions that every function's essentially think of as an API, right? So so to me, I treat experience as like the end user experience, so to speak.
How
exactly.
you
Yeah.
interact, how you actually interact with the data on the end system.
Right.
Correct. Very good. What about a process API? What's this one do?
The business logic transforms the raw data into something consumable.
Good. Very good. Yeah, great answers. Orchestration, transformations. Yeah. And what about the system API?
That's this. It's the actual API itself. It's the point-to-point solution. Like, yeah, I have to pass an input to get some output. Yeah.
It's the one that basically is in front of some kind of a system, that needs to be unlocked. It kind of opens up that system. So yeah, true. You all had the correct answer with the system API. And yeah, sorry about my sound thing. That's really weird. I see now what it was doing. All right. I just hope that I didn't miss comments people said earlier. All right, next question. Again, remember which tools should be used to build the solution without the help of IT. That right there ought to lead you.
D.
I'm getting a lot of D's there. And then, of course, come back up and read a business user at Northern Trail Outfitters needs to accelerate their employee onboarding process. Let's say that's what the use case is. They want to automate ticket creation. Okay, so which one would do that? And we're getting a ton of D's, and you are right. Yeah, Composer. Very good.
Question for you on that,
Mhm.
Diane,
Yep.
just based on questions, because I mean, as we've discussed, I know practice exam can sometimes be a little bit easier than the exam.
Yes, true.
When does RPA also become a viable answer?
When it doesn't have an API.
So it has to say specifically that.
I wouldn't say have to say specifically that, but that would be an indicator for me
Okay.
when it
No,
doesn't
that's
have
fine.
an
I mean, yeah.
API
Okay.
or when it doesn't, yeah, it would be, or if the data is, I know sometimes we do like a OCR,
If there's an
optical character.
OCR component, or if you are screen scraping for maybe SOX or evidence gathering, those
Yeah,
would be
I'm with
good
you
signs
there.
of
I know
RPA.
when
I
to
think
use it.
KJ, I think they take the approach where it's like not, it's IT, like it's not business user friendly. Like I think
Okay.
MuleSoft.
Yeah, because that's what I'm trying to get to. Yeah, I know what our RPA is. It's more along the lines of when I took the exam, it was like I get this, but it was like choose two of the best answers without the help of IT. So I
Mhm.
defaulted to it, but I don't know if it was right. And I'm like, what? That doesn't really make any
Yeah.
sense. But that, yeah.
MuleSoft's approach is almost never RPA.
Well, yeah, obviously, because the tool, yeah, we don't have to go
Correct, but
down deep there. Yeah.
other people with the same product would not have that same view. But MuleSoft is even stronger on the RPA will always be the last option.
Last
Mhm.
option, yeah. Okay. And then and on your point, Matt, with that, let's just continue that. And Diane, obviously keep us honest here. So would you say that it would have to say explicitly screen scraping, have to say this, and it's just it almost alludes to last resort. Otherwise, it's probably not going to be necessarily an option for business user specific, is really what I'm getting at. Because I know I got presented specific questions where I got confused. Because
Mhm.
Composer was one of them, but then the other one was like, oh yeah, like build a flow. And I was like, well, is that the right answer? And it's like, well, no, you need admin access. I'm like, well, do you? Like, do you see where I'm getting at? Is like
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
the nuanced questions that I think are tripping me up.
It is, and they will. The idea behind it is to assess the question and look for the key factors.
Okay.
Key factors on this question here are that ServiceNow. If you know
Right, because there's a
Composer,
ServiceNow connector. Yeah,
right,
exactly.
right. And so if it's saying things like, there's not an API, you need to scan a page, there's going to be things like that, or legacy, legacy could be Mule too, because if you can, if it's a database or something like that, it can be interacted with. So to be fair, I was not on the team to write the exam questions for this exam, but I do know when I was writing the other exams that it was a great learning experience, that we were not there to trick people. We were to have a distractor, if you will, like, kind of throw you a little bit. So you really do need to know what, the, the objectives are behind what you're
Sure.
asking, but not necessarily like, oh, haha, I'm going to mess up, I'm going to mess with their head on this. You don't want to do that. You want to make it clear. It's to have clear questions with clear answers, but yet to test your competency in that area. And I don't know. I mean, this exam to me was a little challenging in some areas, I have to say. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think because
telling me.
it's so many, I know, it's fair enough. I think because it's so many products and there's
Yeah.
only so much time to really absorb each of them. But you'll get there. I know Stephen, you're with us, right? Stephen, I know you just recently took it. What was your catch on some of these questions? What really, any input you want to give? I know I asked you if you'd like to share.
Yeah, so for me, it was more of just the situational questions with Salesforce. So that's kind of what threw me off, and like it was the multiple choices and those nuances that you were talking about earlier that like I, I had like 50-50 shot, right? But then since it was like you have to choose like two out of the four, that's where I was kind of like, ooh, I'm certain about one, but the other one I'm kind of between two, and that's where I think struggled. Yeah, and so those are kind of the nuances that people have to pick up on when learning the automation.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Agree. Yeah. And I think that it is challenging. And when there's more than honestly, I can tell you that I did not create any questions that were more than two, more than ask two, like choose two, because they're just hard. And it would be enough to get if it says choose three. It'd be enough to get two of them right. You should get at least some partial points, but you don't. It's either hot or cold, or right or wrong. So those are tough. And then again, reading, learning to read the question. learning to read the question. And like this one, likewise again with this one, I would start with here. That's the bottom line. Which composer function? Okay, so this means now you really need to be familiar with some of the composer functions to begin with, to change that data type. And do we have answers come in? Are these new answers? Yeah, no. And no new answers yet? Okay, there we go. Got some answers coming in. Yeah. And it would be date to string. That is correct. And so, we do use a substitute. There is a function called some substitute, but if we want to change the data type of a value, again, that substitute could be used, but we find out more from up here in the description. One of the data elements coming from NetSuite is a date that needs to be put into a string. So that's kind of pretty easy to follow that one, because it's coming in as a date. It needs to go to a string, so we're talking date to string there. Yeah, so that one's not too hard. And yes, you're right. Now, one thing to know about you're right about saying that the practice exam is easier than the real exam, no doubt. But there are some similar questions. And I do know, I saw them and actually was sitting there taking the exam going, gosh, that was on the practice exam or something like it. It was very similar. So be sure to read the question to make sure that you're answering not just knee jerk. Oh, that was a system API before in the practice exam, or, oh yeah, it was this, or it was, jumping right on it. Read the question, because what I found is, they're pretty sneaky because they changed the question a little bit that changed the answer. So watch it on that one. Choose 3. And their benefits. Okay, so now we're talking about how do you define a benefit? What are we looking at? And so some of this is going to come down to, really, really looking at process of elimination. I would do these based on the process of elimination. All right. So 3 benefits they should realize. Okay. They're implementing hyperautomations through their company. All right. So we're getting some ABCs. Oh, you guys are awesome. Okay. Reduces process efficiency.
I feel like this was a bad example of choose 3 because this was really
Yeah,
easy.
like this is just like that's what I mean is like I wish they were like this. 'Cause this would be cake. Oh yeah, eliminate the need for APIs. You're literally talking to an API-led connectivity company. Like that can't be right. Like
Yeah, it's true. It's true. If only. But I guess that so those of you who recently took it, I guess there are questions that are kind of subjective like this.
I'm telling you, like 1/3 of mine were choose 2.
I wonder if I don't think it's a smart test. There are smart tests that capitalize on your weaknesses, and when it realizes that you don't know, like an area you're not sure about, that it'll give you more of those questions. So hopefully it's not doing
That's
that.
a thing. That is awful. What?
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you, as someone who's not good at taking these type of exams, this is garbage to me. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll say it point blank. Like I'm not blaming anyone here. It's just more like, come on. Like I've been in the space for 6 years.
I could write this exam. Actually, but it's interesting because Microsoft, I know for a fact because I have gone through several of the Microsoft certifications years ago. Now they may have changed their policy now, but they do have they did at that time especially have the smart test. And so when I had an area that I wasn't as strong in, I was being hammered by those questions. And I was talking to my professor about it. I'm like, what the heck? He goes, yeah, they're, he goes, it will capitalize on it. So my husband's like, okay, so go in there the next time and sit for that exam and answer the questions you know a lot about wrongly, flag it, and then go back and change it before you finish the exam. I'm like, that is genius. But anyway, I did pass it finally. But gosh, so this is not a smart test. well, I hope that that is not taken wrong. This is a all fair, the questions are the questions. It's not going to do that. Okay. But there is a bank of questions. I do know the first time I sat for the exam, my questions were different the second round. I mean, not all 100%, but I had different questions round 2, FYI. All right, this is one of those ones also that is not really defined in our course material, but I wanted to be sure to point it out when we were looking at Composer. And the question is, what is the allowed completion time? Oh no, it wasn't in, I wasn't showing you that. Yeah, this is something you've got to know. That's why I brought it in here. Okay, so what is the allowed completion timeout period of an RPA process when invoking RPA processes from MuleSoft Composer? Anyone know? A lot of you are getting it. It is A. It is A. I'll just give you that one because I know some of you may not know that. And so I remember that question, and I came out. Now I don't, it's on the practice exam, I'll put it that way. But if you have a scenario on the exam that surrounds something like this, like you want to remember if it's a long-running process and it's a 5-minute process or something like that, Composer only waits 3 minutes. Okay. So FYI. The other thing I think we needed to be sure to address is the interviews. The interviews. Do I have one open still? No. Okay, let me go to, this is another one that we want to be sure to talk about, because when we run, let me deactivate this one. When we run debug and we run this flow, come on. You can do it. Do we need a capital V? Are you not going to give me things? There we go. Okay. So when we run this test, so this is the debugger in flow. Okay. For those of you who are not aware or don't remember, whatever, but we're in flow and this is the debug process, and I'm going to run it. And so what it does every time you run a test in debug mode, it's called a what? Who wants to put it in the chat? Those of you who remember, what is it called? Put it in the chat. What's it called? When you run? Yes, Andrea, yes. It's an interview. Every time you run the debugger, it's an interview. Okay. And what gets created are these little tabs over here that we can open up and see what happened. I call them cards. I believe that that's the official terminology of them, is card. But it's really pretty cool because you can actually see what happens in the actual element. These are elements, okay? And you can see what happens in the element and how the interview finishes, okay? So I really want to point this out, that these are called interviews. And someone correct me if I'm wrong that's watching this recording, or someone on the Salesforce side. I believe that these are actually called the cards, because you'll have questions about interviews and cards in Salesforce or in Salesforce Flow. And how many, how many interviews per card, or how many, whatever the case may be. But every time you run the debug, we just ran it. We just ran the debugger with the start value of the contact vehicle. Where is it? Is it showing which one that I did? No, it's not showing it here. At any rate, I was looking to see if it, because I did the V001. So if I was testing the V001, it would have its own interview. It would have the cards of each of the results of getting the promotion. So this is actually going and getting the promotion list from the Mule API and importing all of the output here. That's all of the JSON output there. And then, the next one is assigning the vehicle name. So everything here is based on that debug process, the interview, and the cards here. Okay, so be sure to be aware of the terminology there. All right. And that's the last question I had